Hi everyone, and welcome to this video looking at the topic of forests under threat with a key focus on the taiga biome and in particular kind of the threats to the taiga biome as we think about and talk about kind of development of that particular biome as well. So we're going to do one of two things within this section. We're first going to look at some of the kind of key characteristics of the taiga biome before we then talk about some of the challenges and the potential threats that are experienced within this biome as well. So really quickly, just to put it into perspective a little bit. So they're sometimes called boreal forests. They have short summers and very, very long winters. You can see there on that map as well to the right-hand side that they are very much focused in the northern upper latitudes, okay? And because of this, precipitation is generally very, very low at less than 500 millimetres a year. And most of that precipitation falls as snow as the main sort of form of moisture. So they experience lots of light in those short summer months, but very little light during those winter months. Skies tend to be clear with plenty of sun as well. And there's very little biodiversity in the taiga forest. Plants tend to be evergreen and soil isn't particularly fertile within that as well. So they are independent ecosystems, essentially. Plants and animals within the taiga are adapted to survive in cool, dry climates, and most of the trees are conifers, which are examples of evergreens. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a second. So essentially, as it says there at the top, the taiga forests are independent ecosystems. So as part of that, the climate, soils, water, plants, animals, and people are all dependent on one another. So if there's any small change within that ecosystem, everything else is affected. So to give you a couple of examples to put it into context, so plants obviously get their nutrients from the soil and then provide nutrients to those animals that obviously eat them. In turn, then animals obviously spread the seeds through things such as what they excrete, and then that obviously helps plants, that adds nutrients to the soil, that helps those plants then to reproduce. During the summer, again, another example, obviously trees absorb heat from the sun and shade the ground below, so this prevents permafrost below from thawing. The permafrost then provides obviously water for the plants. Permafrost is that upper layer of the soil that's permanently frozen. Why are we talking about this then? Why are we interested? Well, fundamentally, any changes to any of these ecosystem components will have knock-on effects. So, for example, something we're going to look at in a moment, if we are chopping down trees, that's then going to reduce that shade, which is then going to cause some of that permafrost to melt. Melting permafrost can either mean that potentially plants can't grow because they haven't got that moisture, or equally, that permafrost may melt, which can lead to flooded land, which again prevents plants and trees from growing. Also releases any trapped greenhouse gas, leading to increased enhanced greenhouse effect and global warming. And then any long-term changes to the climate, obviously, again, impact plants and animals. So again, you can see how there's that very kind of significant knock-on effect there. What we were talking about a moment ago then, I want to focus on that last little paragraph. So plants and animals are adapted to that cool, dry climate. So taiga forests have a very simple structure, much simpler than, say, other ecosystems that you may have looked at, such as the tropical rainforest, which have got very high levels of biodiversity. Generally, within the taiga forest, you've got lots of tall trees that grow quite close together, as you can see from the image, and that's pretty much it. There aren't many plants on the forest floor because of the poor soil quality and very little light. Most plants will not survive here. Okay, you've got mosses and lichens, and that is it. Equally, trees are evergreen, so they don't drop their leaves in a particular season to make the best use of available light all year round. A lot of the trees have needles instead of flat leaves to reduce water loss. And it also decreases surface area during periods of strong wind, and they're cone shaped. Again, you can see that quite nicely in that image there. That means that heavier snowfall can slide straight off the branches without breaking them. Okay, and the branches again are quite bendy. So again, all layers of the taiga forest, if you like, are then able to obtain some form of moisture in order to help promote growth. Similarly with plants, generally, obviously, it tends to be larger mammals, so caribou, and most of those animals tend to be migratory. So they will move long distances throughout the year, throughout the taiga forest, in order to try and find food. Those animals, again, have to be well insulated against, obviously, very, very cold temperatures during the winter months, with thick fur, thick layers of feathers in terms of birds. Some of the animals there will hibernate to conserve energy during the winter, so brown bears would be an example, obviously, of that. And some of those animals also, some of the hares, for example, may have white coats, so they can be quite camouflaged, and means that they can creep upon prey undetected. Because again, these animals are going to need to survive and be able to find some form of source of food within those particular environments also. So as part of this then, we've looked a little bit at the characteristics, a little bit of the wildlife. We now need to kind of look at some of these key threats to the taiga forest. So with kind of any biome that you've got, there are people who will be looking to develop or rather exploit key resources within these particular forests. So here are a couple of prominent examples that we have. So logging for softwood. So trees are cut down so they can be made into housing, furniture, matches, that sort of thing. Okay, and again, obviously, that's then going to lead to those increased CO2 levels. Everything to do with exploitation in the taiga forest is related to money. Okay, so trees are deliberately chopped down for things like wood and paper, and also for mineral extraction because of increasing global demand for resources and energy. Exploitation of fossil fuels. So trees are cleared from particular areas to extract gas and oil from the ground, as you would probably expect. Again, where we've got a rising population, we've got that rising level of demand. Pulp and paper production. So felled trees, so trees have been cut down, are mashed into pulp and used to make paper. Hydroelectric power, so dams are obviously built to generate hydroelectric power from rivers in the taiga forest. That can lead to the creation of reservoirs, which obviously again can lead to the creation of, or the human creation of, flooding. And yes, a lot of these areas that are flooded are not necessarily going to be areas that people are living, but they absolutely are going to be areas that provide habitats for animals. And then last one there is kind of exploitation of minerals. So many of the taiga forests globally are rich in minerals, so iron ore, gold, copper, silver. Okay, lots of trees are obviously chopped down in order to create an area that is suitable for mining, but also then within that, areas are deforested in order to create easier access for individuals, for roads to transport some of those goods as well. So it isn't just in the immediate area that that's taking place, it's all throughout. Because if you think about it, if you look back to some of these images that have been on the PowerPoints previously, navigating through the taiga forest is going to be very, very difficult. So let's have a look here at a couple of threats because of that. All of these things here are causing a loss of biodiversity within the taiga forest. And some of these are natural, some of them that you will notice are impacted by humans, indirectly or directly. So one of the key threats is obviously acid rain. And naturally, as you'd expect, burning fossil fuels releases gases that mix with water vapour. These acids are then deposited on plants and soils. And then acid rain damages leaves of plants and makes it difficult for them to cope with the cold. Because if, as well, soils become too acidic, it then means that they are unable to support growth. And also, acid rain can kill organisms in some of the surrounding lakes and streams as well. Another key threat is that of pests and diseases. So pests and diseases cause damage to organisms. Many pests and diseases are specific to one particular species. So, for example, here we've got the spruce bark beetles, which are obviously attacking our spruce trees. But what you've got to remember is very often low biodiversity. So here we've got a single tree species in a particular area. It's very easy for those pests and diseases to spread and multiply. They can do a lot of damage as a result. And because of that, it's making it warmer. Climate change is allowing pests and diseases to spread more quickly, because you've got those optimum temperatures for that to happen in. And then last one that we're going to focus on is, naturally, as you expect, forest fires. So obviously wildfires are a natural part of any ecosystem, and kind of in isolation can actually promote new growth and help to regenerate the forest. So we're not 100% saying that these are a bad event, as it were. However, what we are noticing is that climate change is leading to warmer, drier conditions in the taiga forest. So that means that obviously these forest fires are increasing in frequency, so they're happening more often, and they are also happening for longer. So frequency and duration are increasing, which is a major, major challenge here. When obviously these forest fires take place, they're destroying areas in huge quantities, and very often they are incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to contain as well. So it can change the distribution of species, as some species are far better at recolonising burnt areas than others. They may break forests up into smaller sections, which makes it hard for migratory animals, as they need a lot of space to find enough food. So again, think about what we talked about earlier with some of those caribou and some of those other larger animals that obviously migrate through. They're migrating from place to another, they're being nomadic, and they're moving to different places, and actually they've experienced a forest fire. That's going to interrupt their migratory patterns. It can then potentially also lead to a decline in biodiversity because they've got nowhere else to go. Naturally, there are different solutions in order to help manage this issue. And again, as I've said in previous videos, there isn't necessarily a perfect solution. It's about you kind of deciding where you're at and what you think the perfect solution, or the ideal solution, let's say, is. So there are two schools of thought in how best to manage the taiga forest. One solution is looking at protection. So thinking about trying to conserve the area of the taiga forest. So some people think the forest obviously should be, rather than conserved, it should be protected. Other people think the forest is a natural resource and therefore it should be exploited. You need to know the validity of both sides of the argument here. So management, protecting them, making sure, trying to keep them as they are as much as possible. So taiga forests store vast amounts of CO2. Obviously, trees, huge carbon sink. Deforestation will release that into the atmosphere, which then is going to have the knock-on effect of causing global warming. Some species are only found in taiga forests. This could lead to their extinction. A lot of the animals that live within this ecosystem are purely and solely adapted to live within those particular climatic conditions. So they cannot survive anywhere else. They cannot survive in a colder climate. They cannot survive in a warmer climate. So again, thinking about some of the examples of, say, the caribou or some of the hares that obviously live within these particular environments, not only are they adapted in terms of survival, how to regulate their own body temperature, also even their kind of hunting practices, their nomadic migratory practices are all suited to this particular ecosystem. So it'd be really detrimental to them if they couldn't live within this area. And then the final point that we've got on there for protection is a lot of indigenous people survive and rely on the forest for their survival and for their way of life. So you've got the Sami people of Scandinavia, for example, who very much live a simplistic and traditional way of life. hunting animals, okay, gathering up fuel for fire, etc. And they very much live their life as a kind of simplistic way. If we don't protect that, that's going to have a knock-on effect on them as well, and their chance of survival also. Naturally, as you'd expect, then the flip side of that is exploitation. So taking the taiga forest and using it to our advantage. It's there, it's a resource, we should be using it, we should be finding some way of exploiting it. So some of the arguments for this then, as we know, population's increasing, therefore demand for different resources is also increasing. People need resources such as wood, fuel and minerals. The taiga forest provides that. Why shouldn't we tap into that in order to support economic growth and sustain our population? A lot of forest industries, so logging and mining, provide a lot of jobs. So, for example, forestry and logging employ 25,000 people in Canada. Again, thinking about and considering kind of that positive multiplier effect, that's a lot of revenue, a lot of GDP that comes from that particular industry. Why wouldn't we kind of, again, tap into that and try and use that to our advantage? And then finally, the last point then, exploitation provides a lot of revenue and contributes to GDP, which is very similar to what we've just sort of said. The forestry industry in Sweden is worth $15 billion each year. So again, there's a lot of money that comes from this. If you're not exploiting these forests, and arguably you are then conserving and protecting them, that's $15 billion that Sweden, as an example, is not able to earn and put back into its economy. It's 25,000 people in Canada that are out of work and out of employment and not positively contributing to the economy. So again, it's one of those, it isn't necessarily solely right or solely wrong. It's about you trying to create a little bit of an understanding, a little bit of balance, and come to that leveled and balanced judgment. So a couple of things to do. Think about some of those key threats to the taiga biome. Think about, obviously, sort of logging, exploitation, paper production, hydroelectric power, minerals, and think about why do those threats exist? Why are we trying to exploit those environments like this? Global location of the taiga biome, particularly think about those northern higher upper latitudes, and then could be an extended sort of response in an exam question. What's the best solution? Is it to protect the taiga forest or is it to exploit the taiga forest? And again, it doesn't matter what your school of thought is. It doesn't matter what your opinion is overall. The mark scheme doesn't say this is the right answer, this is the wrong answer, but it's about are you able to articulate that well enough, provide reasons for your points, and fundamentally as part of that then, are you then able to give an overall judgment and a justification for your decision? It's about how well do you put those points across in an ordered, logical sequence with place-specific detail.